The Islamic Republic of Iran is a state in the Southwest Asia. Its capital is the city of Tehran. Iran is located in Southwest Asia. It is the 17th largest country in the world by area. Iran is bordered by Azerbaijan, Armenia in the northwest, by Turkmenistan in the northeast, by Pakistan and Afghanistan in the east, and by Turkey and Iraq in the west. Iran is bounded by the Caspian Sea to the northeast and the Persian and Oman Gulfs of the Arabian Sea to the south. The total population of Iran is 84,023,018. Approximately half of the population is Persian. The vast majority is Shia Muslim. The population density is 43 people per square kilometer. Most of the population of Iran are ethnic Persians, 36% to 61% according to various estimates. The second largest ethnic group is Azers, 16 to 40% according to various estimates. The Kurds constitute about 5 to 10% of Iran's population. Along the shores of the Caspian Sea, the Talish, Gilan, and Mazandaran inhabit about 7%. Turkmens and others are represented in the northeast. The majority of Iranians are Muslims, 89 are Shia, 9 are Sunni. The remaining 2% are Christians, Zoroastrians, Jews, and Baha'i. A quarter of Iranians are under 15 years old, which makes Iran one of the youngest countries in the world. However, despite this fact, scientists have recently recorded a precipitous drop in the birth rate in the country, due to which the Iranian government is revisiting its family policy towards an increase in the birth rate. Previously, the country had a population policy of one child is good, two is enough. In historical retrospect, Iran had enormous manpower. The Persian army has always been one of the most numerous in the ancient world and antiquity. Even during the period of factionalism and the plague epidemic of the 2nd century AD, which claimed countless lives, the Romanian legions could not provide much of an advantage over the less militant Persians. Later, when Europe was threatened by the military hegemony of the Ottoman Porte, Persia was able to inflict defeat on China, the Turkic Khans of Central Asia, and Turkey. In the Middle Ages, the population of Iran outnumbered that of any European kingdom or even the Holy Roman Empire. Economy. Strengths. The world's second largest oil producer among OPEC countries. Potential for related industrial sectors for increased production of traditional export commodities, carpets, pistachios, and caviars. Weaknesses. Sanctions imposed on Iran since 1979 limit contact with Iran and access to technology. High unemployment of 12% and inflation. Iran is the largest economy in the Middle East, second only to China, Japan, India, Turkey, Indonesia, and South Korea in Asia in terms of GDP. 45% of budget revenues come from oil and gas exports, 31% from taxes and fees. Iran is an industrialized country with a developed oil industry. There are oil refineries and petrochemical plants. Oil, coal, gas, copper, iron, manganese, and lead zinc ore are mined. Engineering and metal works, as well as food and textile industries, are well represented. Iran has 16% of the world's natural gas reserves. In 2005, Iran had 132 billion barrels of proven oil reserves, about 10% of the world's reserves. Iran produces around 4.2 million barrels per day, of which about 2.7 million barrels are exported. Iran was the world's fourth largest oil exporter and the largest oil supplier to China. The main buyers in 2017 were China 27.5%, India 15.1%, South Korea 11.4%, Turkey 11.1%, Italy, Japan. Iran's armed forces consist of two main components, the army and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. In total, about 1.5 million people are serving in the armed forces. The reserves make up 350,000. Iran also has a paramilitary organization where 90,000 volunteers and 11 million reservists, including women, serve permanently. Thus, the total number of armed forces, including the reserve force in Iran, exceeds 12 million people. Iran's combat capabilities are strictly secret. In recent years, it has launched production ballistic missiles, including Shahab-3, the Dastan tank, and the upgraded T-72 tank. And while Iran used to spend 3.3% of GDP on the military budget, which was much less than other countries in the Middle East, especially Israel, Iran's spending on armaments has increased dramatically in the recent years. In addition, Iran has a satellite in space. The Islamic Revolution in Iran was a transition from the Shah's monarchical regime of Pahlavi to the Islamic Republic led by Ayatollah Khomeini, the leader of the revolution and founder of the new order. The revolution is usually considered to have a start with a massive anti-Shah protests in January 1978, which were suppressed by government forces. In January 1979, after the country was paralyzed by continuous strikes and rallies, Pahlavi and his family left Iran, and Ayatollah Khomeini, who were in exile in France, arrived in Tehran on 1st of February. The Ayatollah was greeted by millions of jubilant Iranians. On April 1, 1979, following a popular referendum, Iran was officially proclaimed an Islamic Republic. The internal political consequences of the revolution were manifested in the establishment of the theocratic regime of the Muslim clergy and the rise of Islam in all spheres of life. The foreign policy was also radically changed. Iran's relation with the United States became extremely strained. Prior to 1979, Iran was a pro-Western state. The 1979 Islamic Revolution, which took place on a wave of anti-Americanism, radically changed Iran's foreign policy. It led to a deterioration in relations with all Western countries and caused a rupture in diplomatic relations with the USA, which have not yet been restored. The revolution also coincided with the introduction of Soviet troops into Afghanistan, which had an extremely negative impact on relations with the USSR. The revolution damaged relations not only with the West but also the Arab world. In the 1980s, Iraq invaded the oil-rich Khuzestan, initiating the Iran-Iraq War. After knocking Iraqi troops out of Iran, the Iraqi leadership planned to export the Islamic Revolution to Iraq with a counteroffensive. However, due to the rapid depletion of troops and the use of chemical weapons by the Iraqi army, whose plans were not successful. Meanwhile, Iranian-American relations deteriorated further after a U.S. missile cruiser in the Persian Gulf shot down an Iranian passenger plane. At the end of the Iran-Iraq War and with Khomeini's death, Iran's relation with Europe gradually began to improve, helped to a large extent by Rafsanjani's pragmatic policies. New relations were forged with the independent republics of the collapsed USSR. Nevertheless, Iran's relation with the United States remained tense. There are territorial disputes between Iran and the United Arab Emirates over 3 islands in the Strait of Hormuz, which control the entrance to the Persian Gulf. There are also claims to territories in Azerbaijan and Afghanistan and parts of Pakistan.